In Australia, there's this thing called the tall poppy syndrome, and I think it was really born from convict roots where everyone was going to be equal, no one could be better than anybody else. And really how that manifested culturally was, if you say you want to do anything that's kind of much above what anyone else wants to do, you kind of can get chopped down like a tall poppy. And I remember my father had big ambitions for me. He used to say, "Margaret Mary, you're a competent girl. I can see you, I could see you being in charge of a convent one day. Mother Margaret Mary." Sister Margaret Mary. I was like, "Okay, Dad." It wasn't really doing it for me. And then I remember, no, I can see you doing bigger things. I can see you being in charge of a whole order of convents. Again, it wasn't doing much for me. And I remember saying, I'd really love to be a journalist when I grow up. And my mother saying, "But darling, you can't be a journalist." I said, "I can't." And she said, "No, you can't be a journalist. People who be journalists, they know what's going on in the world, darling. I mean, they're into politics and, they know about things. And you wouldn't even know who the President of the United States was." And I remember thinking, oh, no, I don't. And hey, how many of you know who the Prime Minister of Australia is? And I remember she said, "You don't even read the newspaper." And it was years later, as I thought about that, I realised, but we didn't get the newspaper. What hope was there? So anyway, I came from this environment where, it really wasn't, overly encouraging of dreaming big. And I remember for my sister Anne, who's 9 years younger than me, she was finishing up high school. I said, "What would you really love to do?" And she said, "I'd really love," and she couldn't even say, I'd really love to be a doctor. But, you've got to be really smart to be a doctor." And I said, "You could be a doctor, you just have to work hard." She's like, "Oh." And I remember her afterwards saying, "It never occurred to me that I could really be a doctor." In our family, that was like, no one still has ever been a doctor. But just stepping back into a mood of possibility and embracing what I call a mood of wonder and asking yourself, if I could achieve whatever it was that really inspired me, if it wasn't my fear that was keeping me from going, hey, don't put yourself out there too much, don't dream too big because, hey, then, you might fail to achieve it. What would I aspire to do? What goals would I take on? What vision for my career and my life would I begin to work toward?